and gentlemen, could I ask you to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please stay standing after. Would you like to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like you asked to please stay standing and observe a moment of silence as we think about those Americans that are in harm's way this evening, from those that are serving in the armed forces across the globe to the first responders here in town. Thank you. Have a seat. At this time, I'd like to thank our sponsors. I'm part of a new sponsor, the Stonington Community Forum. As you know, we're on Facebook. But what I thought I'd try to do is get the forum out into the public. And this forum serves as a first for us, and we're looking forward to building our sponsorship and other live events in the future. I'd like to thank Beth Stewart and her staff here at the Como for allowing us to be here this evening. Since 1945, the Como has relied on the generosity of individuals, foundations, and businesses to keep their program accessible and affordable. Guided by their mission, they are committed to addressing the needs of the ever-changing and growing community which they serve. Because it is because of the community collective support that the Como continues to build on its 70-year legacy. Please see Beth or Linda for any more information about programs and how you can support the Como. There will be an event this coming next week, the Pumpkin Chumpkin, over on Owens Field, if you'd like to join them. That is the Saturday, November 7th. Next, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for being here. Since 1920, they've been a grassroots, nonpartisan political organization that has been at the forefront of educating Connecticut voters to become better informed on current issues and active participants in government. So thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut. The Chamber, with a membership that is a collaboration of business and community leaders dedicated to securing and enhancing the economic vitality of Eastern Connecticut. The Chamber will be hosting a breakfast with Governor Daniel Malloy on Wednesday, October 28th. That will be held at the Mohegan Sun Convention Center. Please see their website for more information. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Day and Paul Choiniere for their support and his willingness to serve as tonight's moderator. Paul is the editorial page editor of the Day. Before taking that position, Paul's covered a variety of topics for the Day over 20 years. At this point, I'd like to introduce our candidates for selectmen. First Selectman incumbent George Kraus, incumbent Selectman Rob Simmons, incumbent Selectman Mike Spellman, and candidate Kate Rotella. With that, I turn it over to Paul Choiniere. Thank you.
Great to see. Good to see such a great turnout here tonight. In fact, we got more people. We got seats. We have a few seats down here and scattered about, particularly people that might find it difficult to stand for the roughly hour long the debate. There are some seats down here. Don't be shy. It's kind of a good problem to have. We don't see that in all our communities. Such a good turnout. So it's nice to see that. Democracy and the electoral process is alive and well here in Stonington, as it always seems to be. A very involved community. The format we're going to use tonight, we're going to give the candidates a chance for 1 minute opening statements, the order determined by a flip of the coin, and then they will have 1 minute at the close of our debate to wrap up. During the course of the debate, I will rotate questions among the candidates. The candidates will each have 1 minute to respond to the question, and we'll keep rotating that order. And then, if they so choose, They'll each have a chance at a 30-second rebuttal or follow-up before we move on to the next question. We've received some questions from some of you. I received some email questions in advance and some questions here tonight. So I'll try to get to as many as we can over the course of our hour-long debate. Just for the information of the candidates, the timekeepers will have a 15-second warning to let you know when your time is running down. The timekeepers are in the same order as the candidates. Then they'll hold up a stop. I'll give you a couple of seconds to wrap up. If you keep talking, then I'll have to be fair to all, I'll have to shut it down. So with that, we're going to begin with an opening statement by Michael Spellman. Mr. Spellman.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of London Day for sponsoring this event. My opening statement, I'll introduce myself to those who don't know me. I'm a lifelong Stonington resident, educated in Stonington High School and Central Connecticut State University. I chose to relocate here to Stonington, graduated from Central, and have never regretted it. It's a great town to live in. My wife and I chose to live here and raise our children here. I was a career Connecticut State Trooper, rising through the ranks of Connecticut State Police. I held every rank from trooper, resident trooper, detective, all the way up to lieutenant. In that position, I would have command and leadership experience. I've had to deploy resources. I was that person that you gave a telephone call at 2 o'clock in the morning when you weren't sure what to do. The situation that you see when you're in as a selectman is you're looking for somebody who's going to advocate, advise, and implement. And that is in regard to your policy. These are not ceremonial positions, and you're going to need people in the future that can move the town forward. Thank you.
And next we'll go to Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. My name is Rob Simmons, and I'm a selectman here in the town of Stonington. I'm running for first selectman because, frankly, I'm tired of reading bad things in the papers, sorry, Paul, about a wonderful town, and I'd like to do something to fix it. I hold a master's degree in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and I have leadership experience from over 37 years in the U.S. Army, retiring as a colonel. I also served in the Connecticut General Assembly with many of our colleagues, the United States Congress, and I was Connecticut business advocate. And I feel that these experiences will give me unique relationships and the opportunity to bring fresh ideas to the management of the wonderful town of Stonington. The Simmons-Spellman slate is 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and an unaffiliated voter, Mike Spellman. And I think our tripartisan approach will bring good government back to the town of Stonington. I'm dedicated to a new beginning and putting Stonington first.
Thank you. Kate Rotella, who will go next.
Hi, my name is Kate Rotella, and I have lived in Stonington for over 20 years. And with each passing year, this community becomes more important to me, my husband Peter, and our son Gianni. My professional experience is rooted in public service and municipal government. I've had recent experience with many school construction projects, municipal budgets, and public purchasing and contracting. I believe that my experience can benefit the town of Stonington. Every day I serve the taxpayers of the town I work for, and I would like the opportunity to serve the taxpayers of Stonington. I'm the legislative chair of the Public Purchasing Association of Connecticut, and along with serving on other boards. What that means is that I not only have experience in the day-to-day operation of town government, but I have also represented the interests of towns in Hartford. I am someone who knows how municipalities work and understand what needs to be done here at home on the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. And George Krause.
I'm known in the town. I'm a teacher, and more likely you know me as the tennis coach. If you haven't seen my teams or haven't taught you tennis lessons, then you'll learn about me tonight. I've been a person that has accepted a challenge, the challenge being first selectman. I was a selectman for 3 terms. Now I'm the first selectman. What you find in me is fairness, respect for others. You are going to work on my team. I will listen, and I'll get things done. My first days in town hall, we worked hard. I showed respect, and the thing that happened is the Christmas party that didn't happen in 2013 happened in 2014. Then all of a sudden we had the storm. I saw two trucks break down. Fortunately, my team came together, and the National Guard came in. As the National Guard came in...
Mr. Cross, I have to wrap it up.
Okay. I'll finish the story later.
All right, thank you. All right, let's get to our questions. I'm going to start first with Rob Simmons. Then his running mate will get a chance to also answer. They have up to a minute if he so chooses, and we'll continue with that rotation. So, to Mr. Simmons, as a congressman, you earned a reputation as a moderate ready to work across the aisle. But in your radio appearances of late, you have struck a far more combative right-wing persona. Which Rob Simmons would become first selectman?
I think on the radio I'm characterized as the Colonel. It is not a news program. It is a talk show. It is entertainment. It is fun. It is informative. And people have a good time. But the fact of the matter is public office is far more serious than a radio show. Public office is a public trust. And I've held that trust as a soldier for 37 years, as a CIA officer serving in embassies overseas for a decade, as a state rep for a decade in Hartford, as a congressman, and as a Connecticut business advocate. Those political folks on both sides of the aisle who know me know I am a serious person, and they know that I know how to work the middle, to reach out to Democrats, unaffiliated, and others to get things done.
Thank you. If you want to make a comment on that question I asked Mr. Simmons, Michael Spellman, your turn.
Yes, Mike Spellman will show up if I'm elected to this position, and we'll be proud to work with Rob Simmons, who's worked across party aisles, and I think we've demonstrated that. In commitment to our schools to get the budget passed, we reached across party lines, and as a group, first with a $69 million bond package, we wrote a op-ed piece to forward that advocacy to give our students a world-class facilities to match the superb faculty here in Stonington. That was a tremendous job that was done by the school building committee. We passed the budget. I wrote an op-ed piece with Frank Tedisco, who's a Democrat. You're going to have to work across party lines. Nobody has the trademark on what's right and what's wrong. We're going to have to work it together across party lines. And the challenges in the future, we're going to have to protect our grand list. And it's going to be all hands on deck because we are not going to get the level of help from the state and the federal government that we may think that we were getting in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. George Krause.
Thank you, Michael. I was on the K through 12 building committee, and we got it passed, and I worked on it for 2 years. When it comes to Stonington, if I have to reach across the aisle to one of these gentlemen, I definitely will. Right now, I'm, so to speak, in a transition between our three nonpartisans to a very political set, and I'm very much in favor of myself and Kate Rotella taking the steps to guarantee Stonington for Stonington. All my life, I've been working for Stonington, teacher, coach. This effort is brown and white. The effort I've made through my life is always to make Stonington proud of Stonington. My teams are always wearing the brown and white with pride, and we always are doing a very good job representing Stonington.
Thank you. Kate Rotella.
Sure. Hi. So for me, it's not about party, but it's about the town, and it's about the people of the town and what the people need. The residents need to come first, and their wishes need to come first. I'm an advocate for open and transparent government, and I will work hard for the taxpayers of the town and their needs.
Thank you. Would anyone like to use their 30 seconds before we move to another question, beginning with Mr. Simmons?
Just a couple of further comments on the issue of bipartisanship. I see that Senator Andy Maynard is in the crowd tonight. I have worked with Andy over the years. I think he will recall I posted his sign on my lawn, which may have irritated some members of my party, but I did it because I believe in him and I believe in what he's been doing for us in Hartford. I also see Mel Olson. Mel Olson is a very powerful labor leader with Electric Boat, but I think he can tell you that when I was in Congress, I worked closely with him, regardless of whether I got endorsed or not, to keep the base open and get the submarines coming into Groton and London.
Thank you. Anyone
In my
else?
In my life, I've taught more Republicans tennis than Democrats. I get along with them. Long as we work for Stonington, it is a great thing that happens. Once it gets divisive and people go to party lines, then things don't get done. So we will commit to bipartisanship, but Stonington comes first.
Either of our other candidates before we move to the next question? All right, next question then goes to Mr. Kraus. And even when it became clear that former First Selectman Ed Habrick's actions were costing the town money and prestige in the form of an unwelcomed lawsuit and frequent and costly FOI battles, you stood by him. Why did you do so, and what did you learn from the experience? Mr. Kraus.
In a standby statement, I disagree. I stood by the town of Stonington. The effort I made was for the town of Stonington, and where's the day Joe Wojcik? He is here. He can confirm that when the FOI said release the tapes and the emails, guess what I did? Joe will tell you I released them. I did not hold on to them. I resent that question because I'm for Stonington and Mr. Habrick is now in Seattle and is not part of this debate.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons. Excuse me, Kay Rotella, that's the order going in, I'm sorry. Kate.
For me, the only thing I can say about that is, as far as FOI goes, you will, in a municipal government, you will have FOI, and you do have to follow the rules and the way, the processes that are set forth in the state for doing that. Thank you.
And now Mr. Simmons.
I come from a newspaper family. My grandfather won the Pulitzer Gold Medal in 1934, and a West Coast newspaper, the first time the gold medal went to a paper west of the Mississippi. 3 generations of my family have run that newspaper, and before I was drafted, that was my career path. I'm a believer in the right of citizens and of the press to get solid, clear answers from elected officials. Elected officials occupy an office. The office does not belong to them. The office belongs to the people who elect them. And if the people or the media who inform the people want answers to questions, they deserve getting answers to those questions. When I joined the Board of Selectmen, I pledged that I would not vote for 1 nickel of expenditure through legal fees for any further stonewalling of the Freedom of Information Act requests of the New London Day or the Westerly Sun.
Thank you. Mr. Spellman.
In my appointment, I replaced Mr. Habrick onto the board. I wish him well in his endeavors in Seattle, but this coming election is about turning the page from a difficult chapter in our town's history, and we need to come together to do that. What I see moving forward from the Habrick era in government is we need to move towards transparency. We need to have accountability to the people of the town of Stonington. We need to have high ethics in what we do. We need to support all of our managers in the field. We have several positions of directors that have not been filled. Probably the most important of them is the director of town planning. That's a position that's critical that we need. We are competing with other communities with one hand tied behind our back when we do that. I would like to see that position filled and be able to move the town forward. If we're going to work with our schools and we're going to give them the facilities they need, we're going to have to pay for them. And we're going to have to protect our grand list and use innovative strategies to maintain that grand list. Those positions are critical. Moving forward, that should be the issue, not the politics and the problems of the past.
All right, beginning with Mr. Kraus, who took the original question, does anyone want to use their 30 seconds?
All I say, there are no FOIs pending. They all have been cleared. That's it.
Kate, anything more to say on that? Kate Rotella? Rob Simmons?
Just this week, I had to go through my personal computer and my town computer to respond to a Freedom of Information Act request that was filed by the Westerly Sun. So I don't believe it's correct that all of the FOIA complaints or FOIA requests have been responded to.
And anything else, Mr. Spellman? All right, let's move on to the next question. From our audience, I think it touches upon some of the things you were just talking about, Mr. Spellman. And our question is, what among the competing needs should be the priority? Should be holding down taxes, maintaining good town services, a good education system? If your answer is all three, how do you accomplish that? Mr. Spellman.
Government is a balancing act. You're going to have to meet the needs of your citizens, and you're going to have to operate under a budget. Our Board of Finance in years has exercised fiduciary responsibility to maintain the AAA bond rating that our town has. We've had a very strong educative lobby that wants to see more done there. The town has given and wisely, in my opinion, voted for a $69 million school bond package to move our facilities forward. That's going to have to be paid for, and that's where the grand list comes in. We have a flat grand list. We have elderly citizens that are involved with reverse mortgages, where the entity that will pick it up when it's done is a mortgaging entity. It won't be an heir. That makes it very difficult for a kid at Stonington High School right now to put down the roots that I was fortunate to have and raise a family here. Our government is going to have to work on a balancing act. We're going to have to work tripartisanly. We're going to have to work across the table to ensure that we meet all of our citizens' needs. And it can be done. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
Mr. Spellman used the word balancing act, and that's exactly what it is. I joined him in my enthusiastic support of the bonding package because our schools need to be brought up to standard. Our children deserve the best that we can give them, and I think it's time to give them some improved buildings. And that's what we voted for, that's what we wrote op-eds about, and that's what we campaigned for. But also a worry for me is that we have a flat grand list. Our grand list is operating at about 1.9% over a 10-year period for 19% growth, but the growth of the education budget is 29% growth. So the question for us is, how do we grow the grand list to increase the revenues that we get through taxation so we can continue to meet those costs? If we are not able to grow the grand list, and I've been working with the EDC, Blunt White, the POCD, and others, if we can't grow the grand list, it's going to fall onto the taxpayer. And in a couple of years, it's going to fall pretty heavy. And that's why I've made this a major priority for my administration.
Thank you. Kay Rotella, and just again to briefly recap the question, what would be your priorities? Holding down taxes, maintaining good town services, a good education, and if the answer is all three, how do you accomplish that? Kate Rotella next.
I think the answer is certainly all three are very, very important to the taxpayers. Certainly, with the passage of the school renovation project, the taxpayers spoke and said that the schools were important. So I agree that there does have to be a balancing act, and it is going to come through development. There's a plan of conservation and development that will have to be looked at. There's also the economic development plan that will have to be maintained, and look at how we can grow our town while still maintaining its beautiful landscape. Do it in a smart way.
Thank you. And George Krause.
Getting back to the snowstorm, I saw I'm going to finish that story. There were two trucks They're broken down. What I've done is a master leasing plan. We now will have 4 trucks this summer, ready to go this winter. Actually, it's passed in the fall. By winter, 4 trucks. Now, the master lease will allow us, when the bond issue, some of you track this, the bond issue interest rate comes up to be tacked on to your regular tax rate in 3 years. This is where a master lease allows us, we'll buy the equipment now and do less in the year the bond rate goes up. This way we can help stabilize it. The other thing in the budget for me is a economic development consultant. This person, I hope, is going to bring in businesses for our town and foster development, along with the director of planning. That is in the budget. Secondly, and last, because I'm on the stop, is a grant writer. Hopefully we'll get a grant writer going, and there'll be extra money to do different projects.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Anyone want to take advantage of their 30-second rebuttal? It begins, well, Mr. Spellman, you were first, so if you want to go first.
To reiterate, the storm we had that occurred this past winter, we did have to reach out to the National Guard and bring people in, and that was worked on all the way across the board and done well. But I just want to emphasize one more time that this director of town planning, the grant writing positions, are going to be key. Anything that we can acquire in regards to state funding or federal funding needs to be absolutely looked into. Secondarily.
All right, thank you. Mr. Simmons?
I sat in on the capital improvement plan with regard to the trucks, and leasing trucks does save some money, but the needs of the town are much greater than saving money on trucks. We need to address the issue of the M1 zoning for the mills in the town of Stonington and convert them to historic mill sites so that we can convert some of these mills the way they have in the borough at the Velvet Mill to bring multiple economic activities in. We have to do that. We should have hired a director of planning a long time ago. The first effort to hire one fell flat. Now we've started doing it again. These are the kinds of things that we really have to do and move very, very aggressively.
All right, Ms. Rotella.
I just want to say that I agree that the director of planning that they're going to be hiring is going to be key to this economic development, in addition to the grant writing and seeing how we can get more grants here in the town to benefit us. And also fiscal responsibility, management processes. They spoke about the snowstorm and how we had to bring in the Army to help clean up. We do have to have processes in place.
And last chance in this round, that goes to you, Mr. Kraus, 30 seconds.
The point is that if you plan well, such as master planning, you can help the town in the tax rates in the key years when the taxes would go up. The other point is economic development. Yes, Mr. Simmons is right. Master tools used by the planning and zoning will allow the heritage areas such as the old mills to be developed. Hopefully the thread mill, the velvet mill, and any other development in that area will be a great plus to the tax base of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. And continuing, the next question goes to Kate Rotella as we go to the next round of questions. And let's continue on the topic of economic development. If elected, and if your team is elected, what would be your strategy in trying to attract economic development to Stonington and broaden its tax base? Ms. Rotella.
Well, first, I think a key piece, as I said before, is going to be the hiring of the director of planning and also hiring the grant writer. I think marketing our town and having our economic development up and running, our plan clear and concise, and getting it out to different businesses while maintaining the look of our town.
Okay, and Mr. Kraus.
Economic development here is based on, one, tourism, and now elder care. There are plans in the works. We found out about them on Monday. Perkins Farm might be a new development as far as elder care and professional buildings. There are many proposals for this land, but the use of this for economic development is a potential of $1 million in tax. Now, a master tool used to overlay onto these mill areas will allow development. First of all, we have to go after maybe state funds or federal funds to alleviate the brownfields. These are the areas that have been contaminated with bad things, basically. And the end result is economic development will depend on how much our workers.
You'll have to save that thought maybe for the 30 seconds. Thank you. Next goes to Mr. Spellman on the issue of economic development strategy for Stonington.
Recently, the Economic Development Commission discussed M1 zoning in regards to the Yardney plant in downtown Pawcatuck. That's part of an innovative strategy to attract business and hopefully jobs into Pawcatuck and grow our grand list. The grand list also, if we utilize innovative strategies such as ecotourism, no one goes to here to see New Jersey. We have the Pawcatuck River is a great natural resource that we have that we seriously underutilize. The Wood Pawcatuck Watershed Association, just across the water from us, from the Pawcatuck River, Congressman Landrigan worked closely with then Representative and then private citizen Rob Simmons to ensure that that went through. We have an opportunity to use the natural resources of the Pawcatuck River and take a look at what we have there and move the town forward and still maintain the green and what makes Stonington Stonington that we have. There's a unique opportunity there, and that's a strategy we need to look at.
Thank you. And Mr. Simmons, last crack in the first round.
One thing, do I have a minute or 30 seconds?
You have a minute.
Yeah, one thing a developer looks for when they think about moving capital into a town or a business when they think about staying here and expanding is what kind of plan of conservation and development do you have in place? How friendly is the Planning and Zoning Commission? What's the leadership of the Board of Selectmen? We have strengthened our Planning and Zoning Commission. We have amended the POCD with 20 or 30 recommendations that we brought forward. We've even put a new EDC and Economic Development website up on the Stonington site. But we have failed to get a director of planning, and we have failed to move forward with the M1 zone change. So the biggest piece of property that we now have in Pawcatuck, the Yardney facility, which unfortunately was vacated a few years ago under the previous administration, that facility is waiting to be sold and bought, but the buyer wants to know that this town is ready to provide them with zoning so that they can actually invest their money successfully.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And our candidates have a chance for a follow-up on that, starting with Kate Rotella. Yeah, we'll go to Kate first because she took the question to begin with on economic development. Oh, you're gonna, okay. So you can use both the time, you can use a minute, and Mr. Cross, if you so choose.
The fact that the planning department is sans the director doesn't mean that planning is not taking place. We have a very competent planner who has managed for four years now without a director of planning. He is involved with everything, and he's on top of all these zones. He has expertise. What the director of planning will do is tie everything together. The idea that we do not have planning presented by these gentlemen is false. We have planning, active planning. We have a new chairman who is going to basically lead the Planning and Zoning Commission, and what I mentioned before is a master tool that allows these type of heritage mills to be developed. Now, by the end of this month, we will have a director of planning.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spellman, you You have up to 30 seconds if you want to comment.
Yes, and I'll stay positive. The M1 designation with the mills, if you go into Pawcatuck and you ride down, you see C.C. O'Brien's, you see Henry Hahn's, you move in, you see Yardney that is vacant. You move down and you see Harris facilities down there where the Wesley Sun is located, and it ironically sitting directly across from what used to be one of the world-class printing press areas. And then you have Charlie Buffum's facility there. There's much we can do. The Director of Town Planning would help us get there and tie all these pieces together.
And Mr. Simmons, last crack at this one.
And continuing that thought, again, first of all, the Director of Planning position is a major position. The first selectman has 5 directors. At this point, only 3 of the 5 are fully filled. Human Services is not adequately filled with a person occupying that space, and the Director of Planning has not been filled and hasn't been filled for 4 years. And if I sound a little bit urgent, it's just that I see this problem is going to hit us in 2 years. And we don't have time to fool around with getting a Director of Planning and aligning these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Time is up. You can keep the microphone because the next question goes to you. It's from our audience. Our questioner is concerned that about the change to the town charter, and that will, in his opinion or her opinion, will make the Board of Finance a partisan body. So, one, they want to know where our candidates stand on the proposed charter changes to the Board of Finance, and 2, whether they have any concerns that well-funded special interest groups could take control of the town budget process. And we begin with Mr. Simmons.
Yes, with regard to the charter reform, I supported the process a year ago when I joined the Board of Selectmen, and I expressed an interest in a variety of issues to be taken up by the Charter Revision Commission. The 2 that I was quite interested in, which was a 5-man Board of Selectmen and also a professional town manager for the town of Stonington, to be explored, not necessarily implemented, just explored. Those were put aside, and the focus was on the Board of Finance, which I have to say our Board of Finance has operated in a very nonpartisan way for many, many years. They have a tiebreaker in the town clerk. I don't think they've ever asked the town clerk to break a tie over the last few years. That being said, I supported putting the charter reform in its current form onto the ballot. I worked with people to make it a single question so it wasn't complicated, and I stand ready to support the charter reform.
Thank you. Mr. Spellman.
I was the what appeared to be the swing vote in regards to charter revision. I will always listen to citizens, and when I listen because I care, I worry. And I said to people on the Charter Review Commission when they came forward to me, I see Amy Hambley in the audience, she was one person who talked to me. I said, make a compelling argument, so we'll move this forward. 1,500 people signed a petition to move that forward. That was a compelling argument. And I listened to citizens come and pour their heart out as to what they wanted. They wanted for their schools. They saw a vision for Stonington in the future. I want to see that sent to the electorate. It will put tremendous pressure on both board chairs to ensure that we have good people involved. And I asked when I sent it to the voters that I wanted this to have good people on here that would always put Stonington first. And I have confidence in the people of Stonington, or I wouldn't be sitting here putting my fate in your hands to vote. But I do support the charter revision piece, and we'll vote for it.
All right, thank you. George Krause.
The first part was the charter.
Yes, the questioner was concerned, as they see it, that this town charter change would make the Board of Finance a partisan body. And the second part of the question, they want to know whether the candidate supported, and are they concerned that it might allow special interest groups to take control of the town budget process. So that was the question, and you got a minute, and Mr. Krause.
The charter vote for me is a yes vote. Why is it a yes vote? Because as an educator in the past, the representation should be voted for, not appointed by the party. This has happened many, many years, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When party interests come before town interests and visions of education, roads, things that the town needs are put ahead of keeping the budget static, stale, balanced, zero, anything you want to say I've experienced. Unfortunately, you need people on the board, as these two gentlemen said, who have interest in Stonington. There are many interests in Stonington, from the roads to the schools. Therefore, charter, do not worry about that. The people who get on the Board of Finance will take care of the town.
Thank you very much. And now the opportunity for follow-up, and I don't know if anyone wants to touch on the second part of that, whether they have any more concern than they did before. Oh, did I miss something? My apologies. It's not quite as bad as a Republican with 10, but I could do better with 4. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. That's okay. I'll be brief. I do support the charter revision. I know that there were countless hours put through this committee by all the volunteers involved from both parties. So I do support it. I'm not concerned with it becoming partisan by one party or the other. I think that the people have spoken and they will speak in the voting process.
Thank you. Now that the moderator's been put straight, we have a chance for rebuttals if they so choose. Mr. Simmons, you want to comment any further on this issue? 30 seconds.
Well, I may have heard it incorrectly, but I thought the first selectman said that in the past, members of the Board of Finance put party before the town interest, and I don't really see that that's been the case. I hope I didn't hear that correctly. With regard to special interest groups, as long as citizens are involved in the boards and commissions in this town, no special interest group is going to get the better of us.
Mr. Spellman?
First off, I'm going to thank the members of the Board of Finance that have served loyally to the town of Stonington for years. We have a fiscally solvent town, and if you look at the train wreck just 50 miles from here in Hartford and then down in DC, you'll thank them for what they've done. They've protected the fiduciary responsibility of the town of Stonington. But moving forward, there is a strong element within the town, and as I discussed that balancing act previously, there are people within the education that want a premier education for their children in Stonington. I've often used the term that the Stonington schools are our crown jewels, and you have a responsibility in these positions to advocate for them and make sure that they're properly funded. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus, your turn.
The Board of Finance does a good job, don't get me wrong, but I've experienced zero budgets, and when you have zero budgets, all of a sudden you have to bond. When you have to bond, basically now you have to catch up. So your choice is reasonable budgets to perform the operations in government that are necessary, or after so many years, such as the schools, you'll have to bond to make the updates that haven't been done for a long time because of your budgets.
Thank you. And Ms. Rotella, anything further? Okay. So the next round of questions begin with George Kraus. And I got a question was emailed to us actually before the debate from Roger Kaiser. Roger is president of the Stonington Public Administrators Association, Local 54. And to Mr. Kraus to begin, he wants to know what process, policy, or procedure that is in place for the termination of an employee would you change and why? Begins with Mr. Kraus.
The procedures that he is asking about are in contracts. The legal end of the town handles these contracts. The only thing I would change probably is an ombudsman, where if both sides agree, you can send the problem to an ombudsman to investigate and mediate. This might stop much of the conflict back and forth, and also it might give us a chance to get a resolution. As far as things go now, everything is contractual, everything is in the hands of lawyers, But in the long run, if this ombudsman could come through, it would save the town money and time and effort and might get a good resolution.
All right, thank you. Kate Rotella.
So what I would say about that is, first of all, it's always hard when you have to terminate anybody. The processes and the policies need to be in place. And one of the things that I would look at is what are the processes we have and how do we follow those processes? Are they written out? Does everybody know what those processes are? I think it's important for everyone to understand what the processes are. Do we need a director or a management? There's been some discussion here in regards to whether there's an ombudsman or a town manager or something. So I think that part of the process has to be...
Looks like our time is up. Timekeeper, do I have that right?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are we done?
She was still in the first round, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you have another 30 seconds. We apologize.
Okay. So again, for me, it's about the processes that are in place. There are contractual things when you have unions involved, and so you have to follow those processes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. We're still in the 1 minute round, and next to Mr. Simmons, just to repeat, what process, policy, procedure, if any, that is in place for the termination of an employee would you change, and why? You have a minute, Mr. Simmons.
Some time ago, I looked into the issue of policies and procedures with regard to hiring and firing in the town of Stonington. And while procedures of some sort may be contained in the contract, I could find no written statement of policy. So I called the former administrative officer and asked him how it was done and if they wrote it down. And he described a fairly lengthy process that involved the first selectman very directly. And maybe Mr. Spellman can share with us how his father did it over the 25 years that he was our first selectman. But it seems to me that one of the first things that we need to do up at Town Hall is review those policies and procedures, because I would say that the vagueness or lack of clarity exposes us to lawsuits. And if I'm elected first selectman, I will take a leadership role and be directly involved in every hiring and every firing case that we may have.
Thank you. And Mr. Spellman, 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. I see Captain O'Shaughnessy from the Connecticut State Police in the audience, and he knows that when I served in the State Police, I also worked with Internal Affairs and the Labor Relations Unit. I have been on the other side of the table when you've had the unfortunate circumstance of terminating someone. Harry Truman said it best when he said that the buck stops here. When you're the first selectman, the buck stops at your desk. When people work for you, Stonington is a community, and ultimately a community is a group of families. You're also responsible for the families of the people that work for you. If you're going to terminate somebody, you need to have we call the EAP, an employee assistant personnel, that would sit down, that would ensure that their children have COBRA insurance going out the door, would ensure that they're handling it well, that they've been terminated so that we don't have a tragedy when something like that occurs. Those are all things that need to be part of the process. But ultimately, you have to ensure that you have the standard of just cause to make that termination. And just cause is a circumstance that is difficult to quantify, but when you know you have it, you have it. And then you move forward with that, and you need to build a consensus before you take the action. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the 30-second response time to that question, and we begin back with Mr. Kraus.
If we're alluding to things at the present, we follow all procedures and all legal responsibilities. We respect the law, we respect the individual. Nothing we have done, and you're alluding to the fact that we've done something that's not right, has been followed by contractual and also by legal. So at the moment, we are doing what is prescribed by law in these cases.
Thank you. Kate Rotella?
Okay, so again, I just want to say, for me, it's about having a process and a procedure and policies in place. So one of the things I would do is I would start to get those processes and policies written down and make sure everybody knows where they are.
All right, thank you. Mr. Simmons, 30 seconds.
A month and a half ago, I received the unbound, open, clipped personnel file of a terminated employee. I don't believe that was proper. I don't believe that file followed procedures, at least no procedure that I'm familiar with. And I don't even know whether that was legal. But I will reiterate, as first selectman, I will take a leadership role to review all policies and procedures with regard to hiring and firing so that we have an open, fair system.
Thank you. And Mr. Spellman.
It's an honor to work for the town of Stonington. And when you work for the town of Stonington, ultimately you're part of the Stonington family. We're responsible for, when you sit in these seats, not only for the employee that comes forward, but for their family members. And we have to ensure that their needs are met. When you have to take the dramatic step of termination, I would reiterate that you have to ensure that you meet those people's needs. This needs to be discussed, and we need to have a definitive plan in place so that when we have to take this dramatic a step, that we take it and we ensure that their needs are met.
All right, thank you. Our next question begins with Kate Rotella. Town Attorney Thomas Londrigan has informed the Board of Selectmen that the town has no legal obligation to reimburse property owners who lost their 5% flood insurance, a premium discount, and in fact he said that would be a violation of the town's authority. The questioner wants to know, given that opinion, is there any relief if you were elected that the town could provide these property owners? And the first crack at that is Kate Rotella.
So I would say for me, without being in office and looking at all the financial statements right now, I cannot say definitively that there would be any relief from the town. I would certainly say that the attorney has ruled on it and that we have to follow those rules in the best interest of the taxpayers of the town.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus.
The relief hopefully will come when we work hard, and we will work definitely hard to restore this and move the percentage up from 5 to 10. Right now we're 4 houses left. There are 8. There are 4 left, and we're working diligently to get cooperation from these people. As far as relief, the relief doesn't come from the Board of Selectmen. The relief would come from the Board of Finance. You would have to petition them, and the selectmen would probably have to basically, at a town meeting, if it's over $10,000 to 10 is the Board of Finance, over 20 is the town meeting. So your relief could come from a town meeting.
All right, thank you. Mr. Spellman.
I stand by my previous statement in regards to this issue, that you have to examine what was the root cause. How did we get here? How did we get that the borough was able to do this and the general part of the town was not? We also run the risk of having a class action lawsuit against the town on behalf of the people that have been impacted. And it's always better to mediate before you litigate. Risk is unique in the sense that you can either accept it, you can insure it, or you can try to mitigate it. No way are we going to be able to accept this, or we're going to be able to mitigate it. So we're going to have to take a look at how we're going to insure it. There are risk pools, if you look all along the coastal regions of the state of Connecticut, that are being impacted by these problems. This may need a legislative solution. And I look at Diana Irvin as I state that, where we grab a large risk pool and we move that forward so that we maintain competitive rates, and it's an economic opportunity for the state as well, where we can use it with one of our insurance companies up in Hartford and utilize local contractors if anything goes wrong to take care of this. If I'm elected, I will be calling you to try to forward that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons, you get 1 minute to address the question from our audience.
I live in a flood zone, and about a month ago, I received a glossy flyer titled Flood, with some language signed by the first selectman that there were 1,305 policy owners in Stonington who lived in flood areas and therefore had the benefit of a FEMA program that would give you a 5 or greater % discount on your insurance. I noticed when I read it that my name wasn't on it and Selectman Spellman was not on it. I thought that was a little unfair at the time. But then later, when we discovered that we lost the 5%, I felt, well, maybe that was lucky for me. Some people living in flood zones have mortgages. This is a big cost for them. I respect Town Attorney Londrigan. We may not have a legal obligation, but we have a moral obligation to fix this problem and to make them whole. And that's exactly what I will do as first selectman.
All right, now we go to the 30-second follow-up. Kate, I think, took the question. You get first crack. Are you going to defer? So he has a minute then. Mr. Kraus has a minute to respond.
This is another situation just as we had a planner 2 years ago and the Board of Finance cut the financing for the Director of Planning. This is another situation, Mr. Spellman, where the Board of Finance basically cut the floodplain manager that we had in the town to monitor the floodplains. Unfortunately, the letter went out because a young engineer in due diligence contacted the state. The state said we were compliant. He published it, and then we found out, guess what? The state was wrong in telling us we were compliant. So it's a double whammy. One, we didn't have the person watching the store because he was cut. Secondly, the state told us we were good. We sent the letter out, and their apologies come for that, but when FEMA gets involved now, the federal government, there's no back down. We have to fix these problems. Hopefully the owners will help us. If they don't, then maybe we're thinking of other remedies.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kraus. It's 1 minute. 30 seconds, Mr. Spellman.
Well, once again, I'd reiterate, when you sit in these boards, the buck stops here. And I'm not going to point a finger at the Board of Finance. I want to be part of the solution. Ultimately, these property owners have been very seriously impacted. And I had coffee with one of them. They're living on a fixed income. $300 a month is significant to get hit with. This is something, and by no means that young engineer am I blaming him by any means. This is a circumstance that occurred under a previous board that we're trying to handle on this board as other issues. And this is something that is negatively impacting the town, and we need to deal with.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Simmons, you have 30 seconds, rebuttal.
The young engineer who is handling the problem is a wonderful young guy, but the part of the story that you haven't heard is that the two senior people who were handling it last year with Jeff Callahan, the warden of the borough, left. Their salaries weren't cut. They left, they quit. And that was not unusual to find that people working in town hall quit and went somewhere else to work. And as a consequence, the ball was dropped, and when the problem was discovered, the young engineer was left holding the bag.
All right, thank you. Our next question is going to go to Mr. Spellman, and it's sort of related. Over the last several years, weather patterns have become more erratic and extreme, in the opinion of this questioner. Whether this is climate change or not, the risks to the town are the same. What would you do if elected to help facilitate property owners taking proactive steps to protect them from flooding and other weather damage? And we begin 1 minute. Mr. Spellman.
Well, Stonington has been a leader in this area in the past, and global warming is to a degree undeniable. We're definitely having climate change. We're getting more and more serious storms coming through. A lot of times when you look to move forward, you have to look at the lessons of the past. If you go into the Pawcatuck side of town, we have floodgates that were put up down there to protect our industry should we get historic storms or we get historic floods. Westerly chose not to do that. If you look at the storm that occurred in 2010 when we got that freak rain squall that went through, we got 10, 11 inches of rain. We were prepared for it. They were not. They still have businesses that didn't come back. We had businesses leave town for other issues. But as we move forward from these are scenarios where we're going to have to prepare to handle the possibility of climate change as it comes in. And it will become more and more of an issue. And we have a commission in place to deal with it. And we're going to have to take their recommendations seriously.
All right. Mr. Simmons.
We're a coastal town, and we're also a town that has two significant rivers, the Mystic River and the Wood-Pawcatuck River. So issues of climate change, issues of tides, are significant for us. Human beings are special in that we tend to adapt to the conditions that we encounter. And I guess my feeling is that I've seen this, for example, with the fishing population, the summer flounder. A couple of years ago, the summer flounder were not very much in evidence. Now there's so many, the fishermen can't even bring them in because they exceed the quotas. So from an economic standpoint, I think there's some good things that we can do and take advantage of these climate changes. Regarding the floodgates, they have to be open and closed and maintained on a regular basis, and the town has a responsibility to do that. If you see the pictures of what happened during flooding a couple of years ago, we were protected, Westerly was not. We have a climate change commission. We have voted this year to fund them and to support them.
That is the 1 minute, thank you. Kay Rotella first. Oh, yeah, she has a minute to respond to the question on weather change and preparing for it.
Okay, so what I would say is it is important for us to stay on top of those things. We do live in a community that is surrounded by water. We're very lucky in that aspect. We have beautiful beaches and a beautiful landscape. I agree that the floodgates that we have are very important for us to make sure that we are maintaining them. That's our responsibility as the town. Additionally, the commission that we have to make sure that we have that staffed with people who are up on the latest weather things and get involved. Thank you.
And Mr. Kraus.
What happens in a flood zone? FEMA is basically pressuring you, unfortunately or fortunately, take your pick, but the climate is changing. The Climate Change Task Force is trying to develop a plan for our town. This is a future look, but right now FEMA, if you are building in a flood zone, and you're in below the 10-foot elevation, you're going to have to elevate your house at your expense to that 11 feet. This is what's happening in general in the flood zones for new construction. The bad news is also, if you do major reconstruction and you go over 50% of the value of the house, you have to conform to the FEMA rules, and that's going to be a problem in our town. So what relief we can get from the state and federal government, this has to be solved, because the expense will be tremendous, and our town has many, many
Thank you, Mr. Kraus.
houses in the flood zones.
Now, good chance a 30-second follow-up to our question about preparing for the weather changes, and we get back to Mr. Spellman. All right, he's deferring, so it'll be 1 minute for Mr. Simmons.
Well, again, thank you very much for the extra time. The question is, what kind of proactive steps can we take? If indeed we accept the fact that climate is changing, that the waters that we have offshore are changing, that the lobster fishery is declining, but other fisheries are increasing. One of the things that I've been very interested in is to try to work with the state and federal government, in particular the federal government, with our federal representatives like Joe Courtney, to see if we can change the catch limits for some of these finfish that we now have. I know it's not what you usually think of when you think of climate change and warming, but it's an opportunity for us. Our fishing fleet has declined. When we looked at the first draft of the POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development, there was no mention of the fishing fleet. It was left out completely. And yet this is a potential economic boon for us here in this town of Stonington, and I certainly would like to take advantage of it.
All right, thank you. So Mr. Kraus then has 1 minute for their rebuttal. Sure.
This is a good time to bring up the POCD. The POCD is designed to adapt the town to the future. There are tasks in there that are for economic development, conservation, floodplain management, in a future type of look. Each stakeholder, agriculture, economic development, conservationists, they're all going to have a stake in what happens, and the POCD will give you a chance, as it unfolds under direction of the first selectman. Each group will have a task. These tasks can address climate change and hopefully we'll come up with solutions for everyone.
All right, thank you. So we're going to take one more question before we move to the final comments from the candidates. And Mr. Kraus, that you begin with that last question. And I've kind of merged several questions I've gotten on this related issue. And the concerns of these questions seem to be about the perception of frequent lawsuits and FOI cases. And the questioner wants to know what our candidates would do to make town government more responsive to citizens and avoid more costly legal actions. And Mr. Kraus, you get first crack at that one.
When you have lawsuits, there are two disagreements. The town can't stop disagreements. We can't stop dogs in the dog park, and we can't stop the neighbors not wanting them there. So as long as they will not compromise, then if people can't get along, that's a lawsuit. The FOIs, as I said, and I checked the other day, and they all are sent out. So what happens is people want knowledge these days. The FOIs allow them to have knowledge. You cannot ignore it. You have to answer it. We have a process that will be in place that these questions will be answered. Now, lawsuits are lawsuits. In the end, the town gets sued. From the beginning of the town to the end of the town, there will be lawsuits. The number will depend on what's happening in the town.
All right, thank you. Kate Rotella.
So what I would like to just reiterate is the need for some processes and procedures, it appears to me, need to be started. Also, you can't stop lawsuits, that's very true, in the town, but you can have processes and procedures, and you can mediate first and talk with people, have open communication, talk about how you solve the issues that are out there. I think it's important to have an open door policy and to talk with people. Let people come in, hear both sides of things. Find a way to try to mediate the issue first.
Thank you. And Mr. Simmons, your chance, trying to make the town more responsive to citizens and avoid costly legal action. Mr. Simmons, you have a minute.
Well, first and foremost, there's been discussion about an ombudsman, and I pledge that as first selectman, I will create a policy to have an ombudsman named for specific issues that may fall into this category. Point two, we have an ethics commission here on the books in the town of Stonington. And in fact, a couple of years ago, my friend and neighbor Nick Keppel wrote a letter to the first selectman and said that commission needs to be populated. It has not been populated, and I would argue that every administration that comes in should populate the Ethics Commission to deal, again, with some of these issues. I'm not sure that we have a Freedom of Information Act policy in the town hall, but the first selectman sets the standard for the department heads as to what they release or what they don't release. The buck stops at the top. The first selectman is paid close to $100,000. Whereas the selectmen are paid $6,000. So that is a substantial position. It's a position where he has the power and the authority to make a difference on how we deal with the media and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Mr. Spellman, you have a minute.
In regards to the FOI issue, it is a simple answer. It's not an easy answer. But we're going to need a paradigm shift at Town Hall. We need to have transparency. And take a look around this room tonight. You cannot have participatory democracy if we don't have a well-informed electorate. And you can't defer knowledge that people need to make informed decisions by holding back information. We need to move forward and ensure that the FOI demands are met and that we have more of a transparent government. In regards to a litigious society, I agree completely. There's a lot of things that you can't avoid. You're going to get sued in today's day and age. But the ombudsman concept is an excellent concept. It allows the board to be briefed so that you get accurate information and not things that seem to be court of conventional wisdom. There's a court of law and a court of conventional wisdom. You want the facts to make those decisions when you're looking into fact-finding and risk management. But again, you mediate before you litigate, and that will save the town money long term.
All right, thank you. And we go back to Kate Rotella. We're into the 30-second rebuttals.
And again, I just want to say that transparency in government is very, very important. And I agree, mediation before we get to the litigation part is important. Thank you.
Mr. Krause?
And Wednesdays, last night, I passed out a piece of paper that started the ball rolling on an ombudsman. It basically set up 3 retired judges or attorneys that will volunteer and act as the mediators, investigators for this. The FOIs follow a policy. The policies are listed in the town. I will basically post them for everyone again tomorrow.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons?
Mediate before you litigate. It's a good phrase, and I think it's worthy of implementation. Mr. Krause said earlier in his opening statement that he likes to get things done, and I agree with that, and I've enjoyed working with him. And I like to get things done as well, and I think Mr. Spellman likes to get things done. I guess the frustration that I have is that it seems that we could move a little bit faster and a little bit more fairly and a little bit more openly on some of these issues.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Spellman, 30 seconds before we move to closing comments.
I've spoke to members of the media that reach out to me and have expressed frustration over FOI policy. If you engage the media, you can discuss things so that the information gets out to the people. The people need to make informed decisions. That information needs to go out. And that's a policy and a procedure that's set from the top. And that's something that we need to move down with, and it will lessen the rate of FOI requests to the town, which can be quite expensive at times if we are more open in the way that we proceed.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to move to our closing statements from our candidates. The order was determined by a flip of a coin. You have 1 minute, and we begin with Kate Rotella.
Okay, so I want to thank you. It's an honor to be here and to be given this opportunity to run for selectman. I want you to know that there is no question I will work tirelessly to deliver the things that are important to all of us. I'm not a career politician, but I am someone who knows how municipalities work and understand what needs to be done here at home on the local level. Stonington deserves leadership that will support education, economic development, public safety, and fiscal responsibility, all while being open, accountable, and honest. That's why I'm running alongside George. I can assure you that George and I are running for office because we are interested in Stonington and the residents and Stonington's future. Our team exemplifies leadership, experience in local government that will stand up for its residents and deliver what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. George Krause, 1 minute.
The town of Stonington, I've been here all my life. I've worn the brown and white, played for them, coached them, and now basically run the town. Town government is for everyone. It has to be fair. You have to be treated with respect. You have to basically have people who listen to you and don't talk to you. You have to have people who want to do something better for the town. I'm one of them. I ask you to vote for me, vote for Kate, and continue Stonington for everyone.
Thank you. And next we go to Michael Spellman.
All right, again, thanks again to everyone for coming out tonight and to the League and the Day for sponsoring this forum. I look at my position here as not a ceremonial position working here. My job here on the Board of Selectmen is to advocate and to review, ask difficult questions, and ensure that accountability is there for the people of the town of Stonington. I try to be a voice, not an echo, when I look and move and advocate for the people of the town of Stonington and pledge to do that in the next 2 years. In my short time on the board, I've not been afraid to stand and take lonely positions to ensure that the right thing gets done for the people of the town, and I will continue to do that. My word is my bond, and if you talk to me, I will indicate to you one way or the other. I've had difficult conversations with some people, but they knew where I was coming from, and I've advocated for them later on other issues. I will work across the table, both sides. We'll make sure that the people of the town of Stonington, that their interests are always moved first. We're going to put Stonington first and get a paradigm shift away from the troubling policies of the past.
Thank you. And Rob Simmons, you have 1 minute.
Politics is about promises. And I believe and I promise that the Simmons-Spellman team will deliver an open and transparent administration in dealing with the public and dealing with the media. We will select the best people we can find at all levels, regardless of party affiliation. We're dedicated to the educational needs of our children through new school construction and through good budgets. We will promote the local economy to grow the grand list with businesses and development that reflect the character of our town. We will promptly and fairly resolve the lawsuits and complaints that we have against us and update policies and leadership in hiring and firing. We will resolve the flood insurance issue promptly and fairly, and we will be fiscally responsible so that the needs of our seniors, our retirees, and other homeowners on fixed income or out of work are not put out of their homes. Working together, we will turn the page and put Stonington first.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all our candidates. Maybe a round of applause for all of them. Not an easy thing to run for office. And thank you for being a great audience, very respectful.